Hello, and we are live. Welcome to CAD Live. It's Monday, the 20th of September, and we are here live with CAD Live. And how fantastic does this look? I've got some new studio lights, and hopefully this is looking. Hopefully this is all looking good, man. Hopefully this is all starting to pick up. So I want to today talk about, and by the way, I should introduce the show first of all, because CAD Live is my new rebranded 3 times a week at the moment YouTube show. And basically what the show is the only show, the only regular show on YouTube, as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, but as far as I know, this is the only regular show on YouTube where you get your questions about dating, the game, dating marketplace, etc., answered in real time. So if you've got questions about your dating life, about your game, etc., stick them in the chat and we will get them sorted out live during the show today. Okay, so that is basically what we're all about on CAD Live. CAD, of course, stands for Charisma and Dating. I do a course called Charisma and Dating Academy. Comes out about once a quarter, so that's where the name comes from. Anyway, stick your questions, anything that you've got, in the chat, and we will sort them out as we go through this. But today I'm going to concentrate on a specific topic, as I always do, and it is basically 5 tips for how you can start a conversation anywhere, okay? Because guys will often, we'll get into this in a second, but it can be very difficult when you see somebody you're attracted to think, okay, so how am I going to actually go to her and start some sort of conversation with her? What am I going to do? And actually, there are many, many ways in which you can get around this problem, which we're going to be going into, or certainly going to be going into 5 tips as we go through. Basically, to ensure that you don't miss opportunities. Because as I've said before in other earlier broadcasts, what this channel really is all about is trying to give you as many opportunities in your life as you possibly can get. And that goes from dating, which is obviously the main topic, certainly of this video and of the channel in general, but it also goes across other things as well, such as business, how you earn your income, where you live, etc., etc., etc. The important thing here is that you get as many options as you can possibly get in all these different areas of your life, okay? And dating, as I say, is the topic today and is the main topic for the channel. So here's the thing, right? A lot of the time you will be out and about and you will see people that you are attracted to. You will see women that you are attracted to. And for most guys, for 99.9% of guys on the planet, they are not going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities because they're not going to know what to say. Well, for a start, they probably haven't even thought that it's even possible to approach somebody that they don't know in real life in the daytime. And even if they have considered that possibility, they probably don't know what to say. They don't know how to shape a conversation so that it goes in the right direction, and they don't know how to basically calibrate their approach so that it's effective rather than ineffective, okay? So this is what we're talking about today. Now, what you need to do when you're out and about is, and this is, by the way, if you want to have a prolific, varied, exciting, interesting dating life, then what you need to do when you're out and about is you need to consider yourself to be almost a dating entrepreneur. You need to find out, you need to think, right, okay, so I am effectively like an entrepreneur in the dating marketplace. I'm going out there and I'm going to create opportunities for myself, because here's the thing, right? They're not going to create themselves for you. You have to do the work. You have to create those opportunities, but they are out there. I've said before, living in central London, when I go out the house, or when clients of mine go out the house, they report seeing 4 or 5 girls just on their regular journeys that they could be interested in dating, okay? So, and that's just on an average day. Okay, so there are loads and loads of opportunities out there. I mean, multiply that by 365 days in a year, etc., etc. You're starting to get a sense of the scale of the numbers of opportunities that are out there, particularly if you live in a big city, right? And as I said, the fact of the matter is that most dudes are basically just letting those opportunities go by because they're not going up and they're not making an approach. So what do you do about that? Okay, so that's what I'm going to be talking about, certainly in the first half of this broadcast. As I say, please do, and thank you very much, Len Wright, who's saying how to enable notifications for this channel for real-time knowledge. Please do enable notifications. Please do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you know when I've got stuff coming up, new videos, etc. coming up. But yeah, that's what we're going to be getting into, all right? So, as I say, opportunities present themselves, particularly when you're in a big city or somewhere that's populous, which you certainly should be, if this is an area of your life that you want to get handled. These opportunities are going to come up all the time. And Sod's Law, or Murphy's Law, or whatever you want to call it, probably indicates that the more attracted you are to this particular girl or this particular individual, the more awkward that situation is going to be. And we've probably all, at some point or another in our lives, been in that awkward situation where we're in a lift, an elevator, or we are going up some escalators, or we're in a library, or some sort of very high pressure kind of awkward situation where we see somebody that we are attracted to, but we can't think of a way to make that first move. We can't think of a way to go and start that conversation. It's just too intimidating. It's too difficult. And so we let the moment pass, and that's it. We don't then follow up, and we miss out on potentially getting to know that woman and maybe going on to date her or having a great time with her one way or the other. So this is really important stuff, okay? So I wanted to talk about difficult situations in which I've made approaches in the past, just to sort of set the scene a little bit here. There are lots and lots of situations where it seems to be relatively easy to make an approach. So if you see a girl and she is on her own and she's just strolling through town and having a great time, doing some shopping, blah, 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 and, or maybe she's in a patisserie in Paris and she's buying some brioche or something, or a bread roll, one of those long like French sticks that they have there, then if you have the chutzpah to do so, then it might feel reasonably easy for you just to walk up and start a conversation. It may not seem so difficult for you to do that. But those are the outliers. Those are the sort of the easy approaches, okay, that are not difficult to effect necessarily. I mean, they are kind of difficult if you're not used to this stuff. But if you've had a little bit of practice, then those are slightly easier to do. But what is more difficult is when you are when the situation feels more fraught, when the situation feels more pressure. And examples of that are things like the subway. So say you're on a subway train, or a tube train as we call them in London, or whatever you call it, your metro, underground train, whatever. And you see somebody that you're attracted to, but the carriage is absolutely full of people. The carriage is absolutely stuffed with lots and lots of different commuters, and it's very, very quiet because those subway trains tend to be quite quiet, and you know that your every move is going to be watched. Okay, so that is an example of a very high pressure situation where the likelihood is you're going to be intimidated and you're not going to make the approach. Okay, another example of a more difficult situation, and not an uncommon situation at all, but a slightly more difficult situation, is when she's sitting down. Okay, so when she is at a cafe or even in a park or something like that, and she's sitting down. Now, at first sight, you might think, well, what's difficult about that? But if you've ever tried an approach like that, you will know that when you're walking along, you're standing upright, and she's sitting down, it's sort of kind of awkward, because what do you do? Do you like sort of bend down to talk to her? That it seems a little bit awkward. Or do you sit down next to her and start the conversation? But then that's kind of a bit weird and a bit creepy, because you're invading her space. Of course, you can ask for permission to do that, and that's fine. but you need to have opened first. Otherwise, that's going to be just incongruent and weird, right? So those are kind of awkward, tricky situations just because of the height differential. You know, she's down here, you're up here. You know, you don't want to be standing upright and talking to her while she's sitting down, because that's going to be, you know, kind of odd and disjointed. So that is a difficult kind of approach as well, although a very common situation. Another difficult or potentially difficult situation is when she's with a bunch of friends, or she's with a single friend or whatever, because, you know, if you are somebody who is relatively new to this kind of socializing, relatively new to creating opportunities for yourself in the dating market, then okay, you might steel yourself to have a conversation with somebody who is there on their own, because that feels relatively low pressure, right? But what if she's with a friend? What if she's with a couple of friends? What if there's a whole group of them, you know? Then it becomes increasingly more difficult, okay? Another one, what if she's working in a shop? What if she is, you know, on the cash register at your local branch of Chanel? You know, it's a high value, expensive, high society kind of a store. Maybe you feel like a bit of a schlub, and you see this, you know, on that particular day, you haven't dressed very well, you haven't shaved, whatever. Cheers. And you're sort of like, well, you know, she looks really amazing. She looks really cool. I'd love to get to know her, but what do I do? You know, like, how do I make that approach? That's really tricky as well. Okay. You know, difficult stuff. What if she's working in an underwear store? That's even worse, right? Because then, you know, you see her working in the underwear store, you're like, oh my God, she's so attractive. I'd love to have a conversation with her. I'd love to get to know her, etc., etc. But you can't even approach because of the nature of the business where she's working. It makes you feel like a perv. It makes you feel kind of creepy. So all of these situations are difficult. And there's many, many more examples of these. And I'm sure you can think of your own examples of these sort of difficult kind of approaches. And yet, the problem is, I mean, and look, I mean, as I say, I'm based in London. I spend a lot of time in Berlin. I've spent a lot of time in other big cities like New York and places like this, Moscow, whatever. And to some extent, you can afford to let opportunities go, right? Because if you're living in a city with 8 million people, 10 million people, whatever, then you might say, well, so what? Because just because you've missed that particular opportunity, there's going to be others. There's going to be other kind of attractive women that are going to come into your path. You know that. So whatever, you know, maybe it doesn't matter so much. And there is something to be said for having that kind of mindset about this, because what you don't want to be is overly concerned with the outcome of one particular approach with one particular woman. You know, you want to be, you want to be open to lots and lots of different experiences with different people. And just because it doesn't work out with one, whatever, that's not the end of the world. But at the same time, you know, you are wasting opportunities. This is the fundamental thing. You know, you see somebody, you're very attracted to them. And look, I mean, in my experience of this, and in the experience of guys that I've worked with, if you are particularly attracted to somebody, and I've talked about this before, I've talked about that sort of tugging on the DNA that you feel when there's somebody and you've just got that very specific kind of particular attraction towards them, then to fail to approach that person, I mean, okay, the world's not going to end, right? But if you do that too many times, you fail to approach these people that you're really attracted to, it's going to start to play havoc with your self-esteem, and it's going to start to play havoc with your sense that this can even work, that you can be effective in this area, right? Because, you know, you keep seeing these people that you're really attracted to, and you keep failing to do anything, and that is that's not good, right? Because, like I said at the beginning, you know, you want to look at yourself as being like a dating entrepreneur. You know, if you imagine dating as being a marketplace, which of course it is, and you are somebody who wants to create opportunities for himself, then you've got to picture yourself as being this almost like swashbuckling, like entrepreneur. It's like, right, I'm going to go out there. with my sword, not literally. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make things happen. I'm going to create opportunities for myself. And the more that you fail to do that, that's going to have a negative knock-on effect in terms of your self-esteem and your self-perception. Okay. And this is why people will often say, rejection is better than regret. In many cases, it's better to be rejected because you've actually gone for it. You've actually tried to make something happen and it hasn't happened. It's better to be rejected rather than to just sit there at home hours later thinking, oh God, if only I'd have just gone and talked to that girl in Chanel, like maybe she would have liked me. Who knows, because this is the point. You never know what the outcome is going to be in these situations unless you actually try. And as I said in the stream, I think last week, you never know the physical type that any particular girl or whatever is attracted to before the fact. You don't know before you actually go in there and make the approach whether she's going to be into you or not. It's only when you've made that approach that you verified the facts. And we create these fantasies in our mind, right? We sort of think, oh, she's too good. She's probably got a boyfriend. She's probably got this. She's probably got that. And who knows? Some of that stuff may be true, but you don't know that until you go in there and you give it a go. Okay. So as I say, you've got to create this sort of more proactive, like swashbuckling side to yourself. You've got to be like, no, I'm not somebody who just rests on my laurels and waits for the world to happen to me. I am somebody who goes out there and who seizes the mental and who, if that's the correct term, I'm somebody who goes out there and I refuse to just lay back and just be like a weed that's buffeted around by the fates. Like I don't want to be that guy. I would rather be the guy that goes out there and tries to make something happen. And even if it doesn't happen, at least I know, at least I've got that inner satisfaction that I took action towards something that I wanted. And that just makes you feel better. And also, it's a little bit like with sales when you're ticking off prospects off your sales list. Like, so say you're trying to sell a house and you've got 10 potential prospects for the house. Well, you've got to call all 10 of them. There's no point in just calling 5 of them, the 5 that you think are most likely to buy the house, and leaving 6 of them. You've got to call all 10 of them. Okay. Now, the reality of the situation is that all 10 of them are not going to buy. Maybe only one of them is going to buy. Maybe only one of them is going to come to a viewing, but you've still got to call all 10 because otherwise you're doing yourself a disservice. And if you're working on behalf of somebody else, you are doing them a disservice by not following up on all of those different leads, right? So, you've got to make the effort. You've got to make the effort and you've got to go out there and make things happen for yourself. By the way, as I said before, please do put your questions in the chat. I know that we've got some questions in the chat already, so we will be getting to those as we go through. I'm going to keep this to about an hour today because this is more of an instructional type video. So yeah, but stick your questions in the chat and we will crack on with them in a bit. When I originally was thinking about doing this video, I was thinking about doing something basically about how do you eradicate initial approach anxiety, and that's kind of still what I'm talking about. Although I've kind of labeled it slightly differently with the title and the thumbnail, but I was thinking more along the lines of, okay, so because the question that you get most from guys is guys saying, how do I get over that kind of initial fear? How do I make myself go and do something? And that really is the ultimate, in all the years of talking about this and doing this and teaching this and everything, that's still the main question. And it's still the most difficult thing that guys have. And in many ways, there isn't an easy answer to it because the answer is you've just got to do it. But that's maybe not very satisfactory for people. But I decided to frame it slightly differently and talk about this idea that you can meet somebody anywhere, and you absolutely can. And when you think about it, right, things that are most worth having in life, things that are most worth working for and striving for and getting are things that are difficult to obtain, okay? And that we know is the case with something like career. We know it's the case with, possessions or whatever. I mean, there are many, many things where it's true with qualifications, it's true with building a YouTube channel, it's true with becoming a painter or an author or whatever. You know, the things that a lot of people want are the most difficult things to get, but they are the most worthwhile things. And in a way, when you're considering these like difficult approaches, then you can almost think about it in the same way. Another example, by the way, of a difficult approach might just be as simple as the most attractive woman in the nightclub, okay? Because that is a really difficult approach. I'm sure, again, we've all been in that situation where there's a really, really beautiful woman and she's in the club or the bar or whatever it is. And you are surrounded by a bunch of other dudes, and all of these dudes are looking at this girl and they're like, oh my God, she's so amazing, she's so this, she's so that. And they're not doing anything. And that situation is really hard because nobody in that situation, none of those guys wants to be the one who makes that first move, because it's been built up so much and they know that these other dudes are watching, and it's just, you know, and there's something very strange, isn't there, in male psychology that means that the women that we are perhaps less attracted to are the women that we're more likely to approach, because it feels less pressured. It feels easier in some way. Now, of course, the reality of the situation is that you are as likely to get rejected by a woman that you are not particularly into as you are by an incredibly attractive woman that is desired by many. That's just the reality of that situation, you know, because there's the old idea that girls who are perhaps less popular in the dating marketplace are almost more, you know, for a start, they get approached more because it feels easier for these dudes. And so they're almost, and maybe some of them have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to be more likely to ruthlessly reject, rather than a woman who is actually very, very high value, very beautiful, and who gets approached less for that reason. So, but here's the thing. The rejection of the very high value woman feels more significant than the rejection of the woman that we consider, or that you as an individual, because remember, everyone's tastes are different, but that you consider to be less attractive. The less attractive individual's rejection feels like it's worth less, okay? And actually that's a lie, because everyone's an individual and there are billions of people on this planet, and the rejection of one individual girl, even 100, even 1,000 individual girls, is statistically irrelevant. Okay, so it's nonsensical to have the idea that somebody's rejection is somehow worth more because of their physical attractiveness. It's not. It's just they rejected you, whatever. But a rejection is a rejection. It doesn't matter who it comes from. It's the same. It doesn't mean anything more. It doesn't mean anything less. And actually, in the big scheme of things, even in the small scheme of things, rejections mean sort of. Rejections are not important. They are like, they should mean less to you than when you get one of those little insect bites. Or like, imagine an elephant getting an insect bite. Yeah, that elephant's not going to bloody notice that insect bite, okay? And that's how you should perceive a rejection. It should be meaningless to you. It doesn't matter. It's just something that happens. It's just part of the game. I see Ryan's in the chat. Hypnosis for Man. Hello, sir. I will get on to some of these comments in a little while. Okay, so with all of that said, what are some ways in which we can become more comfortable, or at least, if not become more comfortable, at least we can sort of gear ourselves up more to make approaches that would otherwise seem to be difficult. So some of the things I mentioned, like on the subway, a busy train, in cafes when she's sitting down, she's the most attractive girl in the nightclub, she's working the shop, whatever, all of those slightly more difficult situations. How can we gear ourselves up to making those approaches, even though we may initially feel uncomfortable doing so, okay? And this is where we've got the 5 tips. So I prepared 5 tips for you today, so get your pen and papers handy, and you can start writing these down. If you don't want to do that, I'll probably put them in the description below a bit later, or I'll share them on my email. Actually, let's do that. I'll share them in my email later on. So if you want to get these tips in written form and maybe with a few extra comments, then go to my, or rather join my free daily email list. There's a link in the description below. You also get a couple of free chapters from my latest book, which is great. So yeah, if you want these written down with some extra notes, then do that. Get on that email list pronto. But anyway, that said, here are the tips. Tip number 1, motivation for approaching attractive girls in difficult situations. The first one is do it for the story, okay? Now, a lot of these tips, by the way, they're kind of like reframes. It's not like they're sort of like, it's not like I'm going to say, I'll go in and say X, Y, Z, and those are the magic words, and she's just going to go, oh my God, and then it's all going to be wonderful. That's not what I'm advising here. These tips are kind of like reframes. They're ways to make you just think about or perceive the situation slightly differently. And those reframes will empower you and enable you to take the action that you need to make, because 98%, let's say, of this is about taking the action. What you actually say, the tone of voice, all this kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, that's kind of important, but if you take the action, you're in the game. You're in with a chance. If you don't take the action, you're not in the game, and it's all irrelevant, okay? So as I say, number 1, do it for the story, okay? So, and I've used this many times in order to get myself to take action that I'm uncomfortable with taking. So say that you are, like, for example, a client of mine recently, he was in Selfridge's department store, very, very high value, very posh department store in the centre of London that sells designer clothes and things like this. He was in a lift being taken up to the personal shopping floor, I think, or something like this. And the girl who was showing him up to this floor was a very, very attractive member of staff. And he was in this lift with her, and there was another, there was like an elderly couple going up the floor in the lift as well. And he was looking at this girl and he was like, oh my God, she's fantastic. I really wish there was a way I could like start a conversation with her, because I think that I'd really like to, I could really get on with her, and this is somebody I'd like to date. So as they reached, so he started to talk to her, and against all of his fears, all of his sort of like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing, he started to have this conversation with her as he was going on the floor. He was just like chatting to her. He just sort of like, oh, so, how does it feel having to go up and down this lift every day? And that's kind of boring, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, chit chat, doesn't really matter. He opened the conversation. And yes, he had to do that in front of this elderly couple who were there. But they kind of smiled indulgently, and they kind of got the idea that he was hitting on her. And actually, what often happens a lot is that we can be intimidated by our social surroundings from initiating a conversation, because we think, well, what are people around us going to think? Are they going to try and sabotage it? Are they going to think badly of us? But actually, a lot of the time, what happens is that the people who are sort of observers tend to be quite forgiving of it. They actually quite like it. They quite like the idea that, wow, this is something cool happening here. There's a guy and he's like hitting on a girl. This is kind of interesting, And they're quite indulgent of it a lot of the time, because they remember when they first met, or they, there's something a bit romantic about it or sexy about it or whatever, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, this is life happening in front of me. So he starts the conversation with her, and then they reach the floor. The elderly couple get out. They kind of smile at him. They walk off, and then he says, "Listen, I know that this is very unusual. However, you seem like a cool girl. I'd love to get to know you more. Let's exchange numbers, and I'll drop you a message later on." And she kind of smiled and blushed a little bit, and then she took out her phone, and they exchanged numbers, and then that was it. So so it's all good, you know. So you've got to create opportunities for yourself, and doing it for the story is the important thing there, because he said, you know, it's kind of embarrassing. He didn't really think he'd get anywhere, but because he was doing some coaching with me, he knew that he'd have to have something to talk about next time he got on the coaching call. And so basically, in order to have something to talk about, he thought, sorry, I'm just going to give it a go. To be honest, if I get rejected, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? I'm going to give this a go. And as it was, it worked out very well. So doing it for the story is a really, really good reframe in order to get yourself out of your head and thinking like, oh, it's all about me. It's all about what she thinks about me and stuff. I mean, sod that. Don't worry about that. Worry about the story. Just do it so that you've got something cool that you can talk to your mates about later when you go to the bar or whatever it is you're going to do. All right, the second tip, and this is something I bang on about the whole time, and I've seen other people starting to talk about this, but I think I actually introduced this into this space, is to act as if. The concept of acting as if I got from Stanislavski, who is the Muscovite, well, I mean, he's dead now, but he was a Muscovite acting theorist and professor whose ideas about acting have influenced basically everything that's happened since, and particularly the 1970s method acting school that became very popular in Hollywood with the likes of, I suppose, Marlon Brando at first, that was a bit before the 70s, and then people like De Niro, right up to Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, etc., etc., and even Heath Ledger as well in when he played Joker. Method acting, okay? Acting as if. This is the Stanislavski method, okay? So when the actor is on stage or he's filming for the movie, it's sort of like, okay, how does he get into that role? How does he become that character? Because remember, the actor's job is through every aspect of himself, from the way his eyes look to his little mannerisms to, you know, little flickers and imagine all those micro little things that your face gives away. Okay, so how does the actor become another person? And you know, one way to do it would be to say, okay, so I want to be somebody who's really nervous. All right, so what would a really nervous person do? And then you'd almost have to list down all these different like really nervous things that a character might possibly do, and then you'd have to try to do all of those things physically while you're acting the scene. But of course, the truth is that's incredibly hard to do. That's incredibly difficult to do because there's just too much. There's just too many for you to effectively do that. So Stanislavski's approach and the approach of other people who then went on to develop method acting is somewhat different. Their approach is to say, don't overthink it like that. Instead, what you have to do is just act as if you are the other guy. So you are, and maybe you get there by, you know, you might do some research, you might speak to somebody who suffers from great nervousness or anxiety. You might watch video footage of somebody who's like the person you want to be. But effectively, what you do when you go into the scene is you begin to act as if you are that person. You flip that mental switch in your brain. You're like, right, now I'm acting as if I am XYZ, okay? So what has this got to do with dating? What it transpires as is that you have to act as if, or you want to act as if you are that cool guy who just does this stuff, okay? You want to act as if you are that dude who's just totally comfortable with himself. He walks up, he starts the conversation. If it goes well, great. If it doesn't go well, whatever, right? He's not bothered, okay? He's not fazed. You have to go in and act as if you are that guy. Now, who that guy is for you, is entirely up to you. You know, you can create that in your mind. You know, maybe you've got an idea of somebody that you admire. Maybe there's, you know, like a dating coach, or there's a movie actor, or there's a TV personality, or there's somebody on, you know, the internet, or whatever, you know, whoever it is. So one of your mates, even one of your friends, who's really, really good in this area. Okay, what you want to do is you want to visualize that person, that individual, and then you want to act as if you are there for a short period of time. And this is the great thing about acting as if. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing. It doesn't have to last forever. It only has to last for act as if you're me, if you like. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Very flattering. But yeah, act as if you are somebody that you admire, who does this stuff effortlessly, okay? Become that person just for the period of time. Now, the great get-out clause of this is that you are not saying to yourself, right, I'm going to be like this forever. And then you're like, right. Because that would be impossible as well. But you can do it for a few minutes, or you can do it for a night out, for the duration of a night out. You could do it for 4 or 5 hours with some little breaks when you go to the cigarette area or whatever. So yeah, act as if you were that dude. So say that James Bond is your model. Say that Daniel Craig as James Bond is your model. You might watch the movie before you go out. You might, and it's good to refer back to whoever your influence is as much as you can. By watching videos of them, by hanging out with them if it's someone whatever, so that it's kind of fresh in your experience and in your mind. But when you go out, you're just going to say to yourself, right, okay, for the next half an hour, or all right, let's say for the next 5 minutes while I go and talk to this particular individual, this particular girl, I am going to act as if I am Daniel Craig as James Bond. And then you go in and you do that. You go in and you think, so, and just that reframing, just that taking yourself out of your own sort of like rather limiting persona, and you might be somewhat nervous, you might be somewhat socially anxious and everything else, but just by allowing yourself to be somebody else for a brief period of time, it sort of frees yourself. Because a lot of the time, right, I mean, think about the term self-consciousness, okay? Which is a sort of almost synonymous with shyness these days, or social anxiety. But self-consciousness is literally, I am conscious of myself, okay? I am too in my head. I'm too aware of myself. Okay, fine. Well, for a period of time, for a brief period of time, be someone else. And then you're acting the part of the other person. You're like, what would the other person do in this situation? What would Daniel Craig do in this situation? Would he be nervous? Would he be sort of like, being awkward with his hands or whatever? No, fuck it. Of course he wouldn't. He would be confident. He would go in there. He would say what he had to say. He would have direct eye contact. He would do it like this. And that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So acting as if, incredibly helpful. It's a very, very small thing, but I can tell you guys, and this is actually, when we do CAD Academy, I can't do the pointing. When we do CAD Academy, the actual course, which will open again later in the year, this is something that I go into in great detail, because that small little reframe has hugely changed my social life and my, the way that I've been able to interact with people. So it's very, very powerful, although it's very simple as well. All right. The next point of the 5 points, point 3, is you need to reward yourself for action, not results. Okay. And again, this is kind of a little tweak, if you like. It's a little mindset tweak, but it's a very important one, because a lot of the time, and this is very natural, we think to ourselves, okay, well, there's a really attractive woman over there. I want to go and get to know her. And cheers. And what that means is I want to walk up to her and I want her to be attracted to me, and I want her to give me her phone number, or I want to make out with her, or I want to go home with her, or whatever it is, and you'll have some sort of end goal in mind in your head that will mean that you were successful or not, and it's going to be one of those things. I mean, the minimum is probably like, oh, I get her phone number and then, I can text her, blah, blah, blah. And it might go up to spending the night, going for an instant date with her, or spending the night with her, or whatever. You're going to have this idea in your head of what success looks like, okay? In order to motivate yourself, particularly in a situation that's difficult, you need to get rid of that idea. You need to get rid of that that high level sort of goal, and you need to reduce it down. All right, and you need to reward yourself not for achieving the goal, but for taking the action. Okay, so and you can actually literally reward yourself. You know, say it's like 11:30 in the morning, and you are in the pharmacy, and you see a very, very attractive girl who is the pharmacist, and she is. This may or may not be a personal story I couldn't possibly reveal, but she is. She's the pharmacist, and she is preparing a prescription for you with some slightly embarrassing kind of like. Drugs that your doctor's prescribed for you, but nevertheless you're very attracted to her, and so you think, God, I should really try to make something happen with that particular girl, but I feel really nervous to do that because she's giving me this prescription. It's kind of a bit weird because she's a sort of professional and I'm a customer. I'm almost not a patient, but you know what I mean. It's getting close to that, and this is all a bit crazy. But I would really like to get to know her. Okay, you could then say to yourself, all right, well, look, I'm aware that the reality, herpes medication, yeah, exactly. I am aware that the chances of this working out are relatively low. Okay, but I'm going to give it a go anyway. And I'm not going to judge myself on the success of it in terms of the outcome. What I'm going to judge myself on instead is the fact that I've actually had the nerve, the balls, to take action. Because most guys would not take action in this situation. And so if I take action, even if I get shot down, even if this doesn't go the way that I want, I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. In fact, I'm going to do more. I'm going to reward myself with a chocolate milkshake or, something else, something nice that you like. I'm going to reward myself with that particular sandwich I really like at lunchtime because just the very fact that I've taken action is more than most people would do under these circumstances. And that may seem like you might be listening to that thinking, all right, well, what's the point? Because if he's going to get shot down anyway, then why take the action? But what you need to appreciate is that the more that you exercise this muscle, not your love muscle, I mean the muscle of doing difficult things in these difficult circumstances, difficult things socially, that is, the easier it's going to get next time. So, and this is the other point as well, right? You've got to think of every approach it's the approach, yes, of meeting that particular girl, but more than that, it is practice for the next approach, okay? A lot of these things, you're going to try them and they're not going to come off. You're going to talk to that girl in the chemist, you're going to talk to that girl in the subway, and it's not going to come to anything. Well, them's the breaks, that's life. That's what happens, right? Sorry to break it to you. Sorry to be the first one to let you know, but rejection is part and parcel of life, and you're going to have to get used to it. We all have to get used to it. But the great thing about rejection is a rejection is never just a rejection. A rejection is also a reference experience, okay? Because when you get rejected, you've been shot down, fine, but you've also learned something as well. And that is really powerful because, as I say, next time it's going to be easier. Next time losing my thread. Next time it's going to be that much more straightforward, less intimidating, less daunting for you to go up and talk to the girl in an equally difficult situation. And like the more you do this kind of stuff, you'll find yourself doing crazy or stuff that would have seemed crazy to you months before because you are expanding your comfort zone. Okay, so if your comfort zone, it starts off like this, then the comfort zone gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more stuff that you do. Okay, so even if an approach seems completely hopeless, it's still worth doing, not for the fact of whether you end up dating that particular girl or not. I mean, who cares about that? Forget that. It's worth doing because it's expanded your comfort zone. Okay, and the greater your comfort zone, the easier it's going to be next time. And then lower hanging fruit, that is to say approaches that are somewhat easier, are going to be less challenging for you and more of those are going to come off. Okay, so it's really, really important stuff. Andrew says, if you were picking up hemorrhoid cream and said it like it ain't no thing, she would see it as cool. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yeah, it's yeah, some of these complaints that people are referring to. But okay, right. The next one. This is point number 4. Is lower the bar. Okay, drop the bar in terms of, you know, how cool you have to be, how amazing your banter has to be, how fantastically you have to come across. Lower the damn bar. Don't worry about it. You know, an old Burberry scarf on. Lower that damn bar, okay? You know, like we've got this idea in our head, and maybe I've added to it now because I'm talking about Daniel Craig and James Bond and stuff. You know, we've got this idea in our head because we watch these YouTube videos and we listen to these dating coaches and things. We feel like we've got to go in there and it's got to be amazing. You know, we've got to walk in there and be like, hey, martini, shaken, not stirred. And she's like, oh my God. And it's got to be like out of a movie, okay? And it absolutely doesn't, all right? Like in my experience and in the experience of guys that I've worked with, the worst, crappiest approaches can get the best results. And sometimes you'll do an approach that seems amazing, that you have this long conversation, it feels like you're really vibing, you're really getting on this deep level, you're like, oh my God, our chakras are aligned, whatever, and then you never hear from her again. Okay, so lower the bar. All you're seeking to do, in most cases, and I'm not talking about I'm not particularly talking about like the kind of night game here where you're hoping to go home with her on the same night as such, although it does apply to those things as well. But what you're looking for a lot of the time is to get contact details, okay? So lower the damn bar in terms of how cool you have to be, lower the damn bar in terms of how good your like lines have to be, whatever, okay? Just go in there, start the interaction, introduce yourself, make a compliment, make some funny lines, and sort of see what happens, okay? And, you know, if it's not going well, if she's clearly not into it, then don't be like some weird, creepy dude who's like hanging around trying to push it. Just get the hell out of there. Just say, listen, do you know what? Cheers. You know, just say, listen, great to have met you. I think I'm gonna go on now, but I hope you have a great rest of the day. Get out, okay? You know, you don't have to be in there for like 4 hours having a long conversation. Just get the hell out of there. What you're doing really, you're putting yourself out there. You are opening in a confident and hopefully attractive manner so that, you know, fingers crossed, she's going to kind of respond favorably to that. If she doesn't, well, just get the hell out. Just go and talk to somebody else. You know, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. So you are partly calibrating this as well as how she responds. But again, I mean, like, the truth of the matter is nobody is on amazing top form. I think they're going to announce a 10 p.m. curfew in the UK, actually. I'm just on the screen. What a bummer. That is not going to be good. Yeah, you know, like you got to just go in there and don't worry too much about being the slickest, the smoothest, you know, kind of like conversationalist on the planet. It doesn't matter, right? You know, a bad approach, and I wrote an article about this once, of maybe my website or maybe ROK. A bad approach is, a lame approach is always better than no approach, okay? So don't hold yourself to too high a standard. Just get in there, make contact, because most dudes aren't doing it, all right? Most dudes aren't doing it. So, and this leads me on to my fifth and final point. In simply making contact, even if it's not particularly great, even if it's what you say isn't particularly amazing or impressive, you're still putting yourself ahead of the majority of men, which then takes me on to point 5, which is recognize that doing this puts you in the top 5% of men. You will notice that I'm making up these these percentages. I don't have any. I haven't been peer reviewed in terms of that 5%, but you know what I'm getting at, right? Because most dudes just aren't taking this action in real life. So if you're taking any action at all, that's putting you up there. That's really, really putting you up there. That's fantastic. That's amazing. So celebrate that, you know? Give yourself a pat on the back, okay? Because you are actively, and this is, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning, the dating entrepreneur model. You know, you are actively out there seeking to improve your life for the better. And by the way, the lives of the women that you interact with, because this should be win-win, okay? You are not some creepy, weird, kind of like predatory dude. You are a friendly, sociable guy. You're going out there, you're having amazing conversations, you're making other people feel good, you're making other people feel happy, the women that you're interacting with, okay? And if you misread this, if it's a bit awkward, if she's not into it, that's absolutely fine. You walk away, say, hey, it's great to meet you. I'm going now, but I hope you have a great rest of the day, and then walk off. So this is win-win, okay? And it's about spreading positivity. And as I say, that puts you into the top percentile of guys, because most dudes aren't doing it, particularly these days with the dating apps, because everyone's on their phone, like swiping and stuff, and they're not approaching in real life. And nothing wrong with that, by the way. Nothing wrong with the dating apps. You should be using those as well. But this really puts you ahead of the crowd, okay? Because most dudes aren't doing it. So listen, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm going to now recap the 5 points, and then we'll just go into Abraham Lincoln says, no worries, Troy, 87% of that's fake anyway. I'll go through the tips, and then I'll just go into any questions, comments people have got in the chat, okay, for the last 10 minutes. So number 1, do it for the story. All right, even if it's a no-hope situation, just damn well do it, so you can tell your mates about it later, because it'll be fun. Act as if you were that cool guy. Act as if you are Daniel Craig, whoever you want to be. Number 3, reward yourself for taking the action, not for the results. The results will come, okay? Don't worry about the results at this stage. Worry about the action, because without the action, the results won't come. If you do the action enough, they will. Okay, so congratulate yourself for the actions. Lower the bar. Don't feel like you have to be the silver-tongued Casanova kind of dude, and everything's got to hit the mark, and all of your jokes have got to be fantastic, and it's all going to be wonderful. Don't worry about that too much. Just go in there and start conversations and kind of test the waters and see what happens. And if they're going well, proceed. If they're not going well, eject. And then recognize that in doing this, that puts you in the top 5% of dudes, okay? Most guys aren't doing this. Most women aren't doing this. So just putting yourself out there and having a go, and actually in doing that, taking responsibility for your own life, being an entrepreneur in your own life, pushing forward, like going out there actively creating the life that you want to live. Fantastic, right? Most people aren't doing that, You should be congratulating yourself for doing that, okay? It's a fantastic thing, right? So, yeah, recognize that you are doing something that most people will never do because they're too afraid to do it. And give yourself a massive pat on the back for that. Right, let's find out. I'm going to go to the questions now. Let's find out. First, though, if Boris is going to lock us all up at 10 o'clock at night. Oh, damn. Right, okay, so UK viewers, apparently Boris Johnson is going to say tomorrow that pubs have to close at 10 p.m, which is a bit of a bummer. But there you go. It could be worse, I suppose. Let's see how this thing develops. Okay, right, so let's have a look at some of the questions. Okay, so Renee, a little bit earlier, said, what's your advice to an employed attorney? Germany, having loads of work to do in the law firm during the day and being exhausted to go home afterwards, restructure, speeding up work. Well, I mean, I would have to go with James Tusk on this one. So if you watch a fellow Brit, James Tusk's Day Game channel, he's really good. And I saw him in a video a while back saying, however busy you are, you've got time to approach a girl a day. You've got time to approach a couple of girls a day, okay? I mean, when I was working in corporate, I used to do an approach on the subway before I went into work. I had a little break at lunchtime. I sometimes did an approach then. After work, on my way back to the train station, I had an opportunity then. You don't have to be going out there doing 500 approaches, but you can probably do one a day, or you can probably do one every other day. I mean, I used to go into the coffee shop in the morning and, sometimes I'd chat to the girls there and stuff like that. There are opportunities, it doesn't have to be this second career. If you're new to it, it's probably worth a little bit of immersion early on. So you might want to spend a weekend, go out in the city in the afternoon on Saturday, go and like maybe, do 10 approaches or something like that. But beyond that, just do one a day, do one every other day, do a few a week. You're still putting yourself ahead of most other people. So I would say that you don't need to massively restructure. So talking about strippers and things. Well, I do have a book about this actually. I don't want to be just like cheesy, kind of like, check out my book for more. But if you look on Amazon, if you go to 50 Shades of Game, and it's volume 3, I think I talk about strip clubs and strippers and things like this. The method that I talk about in that book is slightly different to methods I've seen other dudes advocate, which is basically that if you become a sort of a regular at a particular club and start to get to know the girls, the doorman, the manager, over a period of time, then it becomes slightly, you start to be seen less as just a punter, less as just a client, and a little bit more as, oh, okay, this dude's kind of part of the family now. And that can make it easier. And I've certainly had some success through that. The other thing to do is to meet them out in different venues outside of where they're working. But yeah, I mean, that would be my main comments on that, really. And I've done both in the past. AC from Casey says, what do you do when you approach? And she says, I have a boyfriend. Well, to be honest, who was I talking to this about the other day? Was it Myron Gaines? I think Myron was talking about this. To be honest, if she says it straight off, then it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. She probably just wants you to go away. So under most circumstances, I might just say, okay, great, fantastic, have a great day, see you later. Or he's a lucky guy, whatever, see you later. And then just eject. Because, there's not much point in spending a long time trying to convert people who just aren't interested from the off. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not much point. Now, if you've been talking to her for 10, 15 minutes or even shorter than that, but if you've been having a conversation and then towards the end, you say something like, oh, great to grab a coffee at some point, and she's like, I've got a boyfriend, then it's more likely to be true at that point. And you might then want to persist a little bit because she maybe they're not that serious, or they're on the verge of breaking up, or whatever. So you might want to persist a little bit at that point and try and get some contact details or whatever, or say, and then you can use the funny lines like, oh, I've got one too. That's something we've got in common, or oh, I don't want to hear any more bad news. I don't want to hear about your bad news, or something like that. Like some crappy line. You can try one of those lines, but I would say I would reserve that, and if she said it later in the conversation. If she says it straight off, it's kind of a blowout. Whatever, just take it as a blowout and don't worry about it. Abraham Lincoln says, what's your take on approaching currently with the masks, etc.? I mean, people ask about this the whole time. I mean, I think, unfortunately, it depends where you are. I don't know what the vibe is like in... obviously, if you're in Madrid and the vibe is very bad and people are very scared and all the rest of it, then it's just going to be tricky. And it's kind of almost like, well, could you travel somewhere else where it's a little bit less prevalent? Like in London at the moment, to be honest, they're ramping up now, probably for more restrictions. Well, as we just saw, the pub's closing at 10. People are wearing masks, but in general, I don't get the feeling. There are plenty of girls and guys wandering around London who are, kind of going along with the restrictions because they have to, but I don't think they're particularly bothered about it, to be honest. And there's certainly a lot of hooking up and everything going on. I don't know about Madrid. This is an unprecedented situation, and people were saying right in the middle of the earlier lockdowns and everything, what do I do? How do I meet girls? It's like, well, I don't really know. I mean, we're facing an unprecedented, situation here. basically, if your location is really, really bad, then in the end it becomes a question of, well, can I go somewhere else, at least even for nights out, just so that I can potentially meet some people. But as I say, from my experience in London, I think that it's not this homogenous thing where everybody is terrified. I mean, some people maybe are, other people aren't. Plenty of girls walking around without masks, and people are going up and talking to each other, and it's not a problem. So we just have to play this one by ear and see how things develop, I think, really, as unsatisfactory as that is. But I don't think the long-term prognosis is bad, because I think, human nature is human nature. We're not going to stop people wanting to get together. It's, what I noticed in the UK was that as soon as they started to lift restrictions a bit, everybody was just like, well, hey, it's party time, because you can't keep human nature down for very long, at least. JD says, approach anxiety never really goes away. You can only mitigate it. That's true. And it tends to go away when the conversation is initiated, for me at least. That's true, but it goes away when you've initiated the conversation also. The difficult bit, and this is why I was originally going to title the show How to Start a Conversation or something, is the difficult bit is the bit just before you start talking. When you get over the hump, no pun intended, and you've started talking, it tends to get a bit easier then. It's before, and you think, oh God, this is going to be terrible. Once you said hi and she said hi, blah, 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 very quickly it can start to feel like an ordinary conversation. It gets a lot easier. Sorry, I'm probably going to miss some of these. Would you invite Black Dragon to come to your show? Yeah, maybe. I don't know if he would or not. Well, actually, he might. I know someone who knows him, actually. So yeah, I might. Yeah, it's a good idea. I might reach out to him, because I do like his stuff. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Watch this space. How do you cool off with a girl you've been dating who's cool feels, but you still want to hang out with? It's tricky, but you need to just reduce contact a little bit. She's going to get the vibe. She's going to get the idea. Just don't be texting all the time. Don't be, just pull back a little bit. She is going to take her lead from you. She might not like it very much, but it's her choice. If she wants to stay in it, then she'll buy into the frame. If she doesn't, then she might sadly dump you and, say, I'm going to find someone else. But most likely, if she's into you, then she's going to buy into the frame. So you just need to, I wouldn't sit down and have a big conversation. I think you just need to lead with your actions, and she will get the idea. Rory says, if guys haven't been doing approaches this summer, maybe the next 2 weeks are crucial before the government lock us all down for the winter. Well, yes. I mean, seize the day, right? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen this week. I think Boris is doing a speech tomorrow in the UK. They might close the pubs early or whatever. Yeah, for sure. I mean, take the opportunities while we can. Been struggling for months. Our curfew is midnight now. I'm not sure where Vernon is, but I don't think they're saying. I don't think they're saying curfew at midnight, but I think they are. I think they're saying pubs close at the moment, but there may be curfews here. So school, I opened a famous TV presenter once after recognising her on the tube. Yeah, that's great. And like I say, this is a very levelling thing, because somebody might be famous, they might have a massive Instagram, whatever. Being able to initiate a conversation in real life is the great leveler, because if you see them, they're just another person. You can start that conversation. It may not go anywhere, but you're in with a shot, which is the important thing. I know Ryan was saying a couple of things. Ryan, Hypnosis for Men. You should check out his channel, by the way. He's a really great, he's a really cool guy. He's got his YouTube channel. Maybe he'll put it in the chat. But he's got some great content, and his his work on hypnosis and also other just mindset techniques is top notch. So Ryan Christensen, you want to check him out. He says it's amazing how low the bar is to get into top tiers of men these days. Just fucking doing shit is often enough to clear the bar on its own. Yes, it is, and I think let's leave it on that because I do want to keep these to about an hour. Because I want them to be available for people to watch afterwards. And if it's a 3-hour video, people don't tend to, sometimes people get put off. So yeah, I mean, I think he makes a very good point, which is, ultimately just do shit because that puts you ahead of 98% of the other dudes. Shadow says you got an Instagram to follow. Yes, I'm on Instagram. Real Troy Francis is my handle. So follow me there. I'll put it in the thing actually. I'm trying to up my story game a little bit. I tend to post. I do posts quite frequently most days. But yeah, I'm trying to up my story game. Maybe we'll do some lives on Instagram as well. Jack Napier says, "Oh, lost him. Smash that like, absolutely." JMC, top stuff, Troy. Enjoying the streams. Thank you very much. Well, listen, this show, which is called CAD Live, see that lovely neon tinged logo there that I've just done, is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, same time, 11:30 a.m. EST, 4:30 p.m. GMT. So I'll be back on Wednesday with another of these shows. I mean, I might take it daily at some point. At the moment, as a test, I'm doing the 3 days a week. Podcast for tomorrow, in all likelihood, I'll be doing a podcast. I tend to do that on Tuesdays now, so that will be uploaded to this channel. If you, that's Hypnosis for Men's channel, by the way, so you subscribe to that also. But do subscribe to my channel, the red button below. Do hit the notifications bell. Also, get on my free daily email list. There's a link in the description to this video. And also, if you haven't already, grab Renegade Dating Blueprint. It's a collection of 11 books that I've written about dating game, the dating marketplace, etc., etc., etc. So do grab that. It's only $39. Full rate, the full value really is $250. So it's a steal. Alfonso says, when are you opening CAD? He's talking about CAD Academy. I've got to get used to this. He's talking about CAD Academy, which is my course about Charisma and Dating Academy. It will open again later in the year, most likely November, but I will obviously keep you updated on the channel on that. So enrollments will open again later on in the year, doing some updates to the content, etc., etc. at the moment. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for all the questions. Sorry I didn't get around to all of the questions. I will try to, any questions that I haven't done, maybe I'll do them for some additional content elsewhere. But do come back Wednesday and we will crack into another topic and I will answer as many of your questions as I can. All right, see you later.